This happened to me in 2019 when I was 22 years old. At the time, I worked a late shift at a small Italian restaurant in my town. I usually clocked out around midnight, when the streets were pretty empty and the only sounds were the occasional car or a dog barking somewhere far off. The walk to my apartment wasn't long, about 10 minutes, but it was through a stretch of poorly lit streets. Normally, I didn't mind. I had headphones in, hoodie up, and I'd be home before I even finished 2 songs. But this one night felt different. From the moment I stepped outside, I noticed a man leaning against the bus stop across the street. He wasn't smoking, wasn't on his phone. He was just standing there. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he was waiting for a ride or a late bus. But after I turned down the first block, I glanced back and saw him cross the street in my direction. His footsteps echoed just far enough behind me that I couldn't ignore it. I sped up. So did he. At one point, I ducked into a corner store that was about to close, pretending to browse. The cashier gave me a weird look, but I didn't care. I was stalling, waiting for the guy to pass. But when I finally peeked outside, he was right there, standing across the street, staring at the store. My heart was pounding. I bought a random bag of chips just to look less suspicious and left, walking in the opposite direction of my apartment. I prayed he'd stop following, but he didn't. At this point, it was obvious. He wanted me to know he was following me. His pace slowed whenever I slowed and quickened whenever I quickened. He wasn't hiding it. By the time I reached the 3rd block, every single instinct in me was screaming to run. But then I remembered something my dad always told me. Never let someone know where you live if you think they're following you. So instead of heading home, I made a split-second decision. I turned toward the police station, which was 2 more blocks away. The whole walk there, the man stayed behind me. Always far enough to not look like he was right on me, but close enough that I couldn't lose him. When I finally saw the glowing blue lights of the police station, I felt this huge wave of relief. I slowed my pace to make sure he saw me turn into the parking lot. Sure enough, I looked over my shoulder and saw him stop at the corner, just standing there in the dark, watching. I walked straight inside. There was an officer at the front desk, and I awkwardly explained that I thought a man was following me. He asked me to describe him. I gave the description. Tall, heavy jacket, maybe late 30s, beard. The officer walked outside with me and pointed. Is that him? But the corner was empty. The man was gone. The officer told me I probably scared him off by walking into the station. He offered to drive me home, but my apartment was only 2 blocks away, and I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. So I declined. That was my mistake. I got home within minutes and locked every door and window. I turned on every light in the apartment and sat there with my heart still racing. Just as I was starting to calm down, I got a notification on my phone. It was from Instagram. Follow request from unknown user. I didn't think much of it until I clicked the profile. The account had no posts, no followers, and the profile picture was a blurry shot of me, walking, at night. The caption under the picture read, "You walk fast." I froze. The account was deleted seconds later. I called the police immediately, but there wasn't much they could do. I showed them the screenshot I managed to take, but without an active account or more evidence, they couldn't track him. They told me to be careful, lock my doors, and call if I saw him again. For weeks after that, I never walked home from work alone. My manager started letting me out early or having one of the cooks drive me. But the worst part? A month later, I was walking. Story 2, the sleepover. This story happened to me when I was 15 years old. I was a sophomore in high school, and my best friend Jake invited me over for a sleepover at his house one weekend. Jake lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where every house looked the same, and the streets were usually silent after 9 p.m. His parents were out of town for the night, but that wasn't unusual. They trusted him. We spent most of the evening playing video games in his basement, eating junk food, and laughing at dumb YouTube videos. By the time it was past midnight, we were exhausted, but neither of us wanted to sleep yet. So we just laid on the couches downstairs, talking about school, crushes, and whatever else came to mind, That's when we heard the first sound. It was faint, but clear, the unmistakable squeak of a door hinge. Jake's head immediately shot toward the stairwell that led upstairs. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. I nodded. At first, we thought maybe it was just the house settling, or maybe one of the neighbors outside. But then we heard slow, deliberate footsteps above us. Both of us froze. Jake whispered, "My parents aren't home." I felt my stomach drop. The footsteps were heavy, spaced apart, like someone was carefully moving across the hardwood floor upstairs. Then, silence. We sat there in the dark basement, neither of us daring to breathe too loudly. Suddenly, we heard something that confirmed it wasn't our imagination. A man's voice, low, muffled, saying something we couldn't make out. I grabbed Jake's arm. He looked pale. He whispered, "We need to call someone." Jake pulled out his phone, but before he could even dial, the basement door at the top of the stairs creaked open. A sliver of light poured down the stairwell. We both ducked behind the couches, hearts pounding so hard I swore whoever was up there could hear it. Then came the sound of slow, deliberate steps descending the stairs, one by one, closer. We didn't know what to do. If we ran, he'd see us. If we stayed quiet, maybe he'd think the basement was empty. The footsteps stopped halfway down. Whoever it was, he just stood there, breathing, listening. I could see a shadow stretching along the wall, moving slightly, like he was turning his head, scanning the room. Then, without warning, the man started moving again, not down, but back up. His footsteps retreated. The basement door creaked shut, and we heard him walking across the floor above us again. We didn't move for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Jake dialed 911, whispering as quietly as possible into the phone. The operator told us to stay hidden until police arrived. We crouched behind the couch, every sound in the house amplified by our fear. Drawers opening, cabinet doors closing. At one point, we swore we heard him trying the handle to the basement door again, but it stayed locked. Within what felt like forever, but was probably only 10 minutes, we saw flashing blue and red lights through the basement window. Then came a loud banging at the front door, and voices shouting, "Police!" The sounds upstairs shifted into chaos, hurried footsteps, something falling, the front door slamming shut. The police burst inside moments later. They cleared the house, but whoever it was, they were gone. They asked us if we got a good look at the intruder, but neither of us had. We could only describe the heavy boots and the faint shadow we saw on the wall. The officers told Jake they found signs of forced entry on the back door. Whoever it was had broken in quietly, rummaged through the kitchen and living room, and was likely planning to check the basement before they got spooked. They never caught the guy. Jake's parents were furious, but not at us, at the fact that someone had broken into their home while their kid was inside. They installed new locks, cameras, even a security system. Story 3. The delivery. This happened to me in 2021 when I was 24 years old. At the time, I worked as a pizza delivery driver. It wasn't the greatest job, but it paid my bills and let me save up while I figured out what I really wanted to do. Most nights were uneventful. People ordered, I dropped off their food, they tipped, and I moved on. But this one delivery still keeps me awake sometimes. It was a Friday night in late November, cold, windy, and unusually quiet. Around 11:30 p.m., just when I was about to finish my shift, I got one last order. A large pepperoni and garlic knots, cash on delivery. The address was on the outskirts of town, near the woods. I didn't think much of it. People out there ordered all the time. But when I pulled up, something about the place instantly put me on edge. The house looked abandoned. The paint was peeling. The windows were boarded in some places, and the porch light flickered dimly. But the order said deliver to back door. I considered calling the number on the receipt, but my boss hated when we did that. So I grabbed the pizza bag and walked around the house. The backyard was worse. Overgrown grass, broken patio furniture, and a rusted swing set creaking in the wind. The back door was slightly open, with a single light on inside. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. I knocked on the frame. "Pizza delivery." Still nothing. I felt this pit in my stomach telling me to leave, but before I could turn back, a man's voice called from inside, "Come in, leave it on the table." Every instinct screamed, "Don't," but I didn't want to get in trouble at work, so I stepped 1 foot inside. The kitchen was bare. No furniture, no appliances, just an empty room with peeling wallpaper. The only thing in the entire room was a table, and on that table was a $20 bill. I set the pizza down, grabbed the cash, and turned to leave. That's when I noticed something in the corner, a camcorder, pointed directly at me. I froze. The red recording light was on. Then, from somewhere deeper in the house, I heard footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. "Thanks for coming," the man's voice said again, but this time it was closer. I bolted. I sprinted out the back door, cutting across the yard, nearly tripping over the tall grass. I didn't dare look back until I was in my car with the doors locked. When I finally glanced at the house, I saw a figure standing in the doorway, just standing there, watching me. I floored it out of there and didn't stop until I was back at the restaurant. I told my manager what happened, showed him the receipt, even described the house. He got quiet. Then he told me something that made my blood run cold. "That house has been empty for years," he said. "Condemned. Nobody lives there." I thought maybe I had the wrong address, but the receipt clearly showed that exact house number. The police were called, and when they searched the property the next day, the table was still there. The camcorder was gone. No trace of the man, no trace of the food.